Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a modern Techno 303. So before I get into that, I just want to let you guys know, I just dropped a Techno mix on my channel, so if you like this video, you will definitely probably like that. It's in the description, make sure to check that out. And yeah, let's get started. So, like I said, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a modern Techno 303. And I'm going to be giving away the project file and the samples and the presets and all that kind of stuff in the description for free, so make sure to check that out. If you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it'll be available for free. And yeah, so the idea behind this video was basically, I feel like 303s are a very, very popular sound in techno right now. They always have been, but there's a very particular style of sounds being used right now. Like a very kind of standard, sort of like old school, classic 303 sound. We made something like this. You get like any kind of synth, and just get one saw wave, put it into a low pass filter with a bit of an envelope on it, maybe turn that sustain down, and then just turn up the resonance. And there you go. That sounds pretty much like a TB303. Like, that's the classic sound, quote unquote. However, as you can imagine, and as you probably know, this isn't the 303 that's being used in all of those techno tracks. And so basically, the way that you get this kind of more modern sound is through using very similar kind of, or a very similar approach to this, but just with a little bit more processing and a little bit more kind of technical stuff. So, I have this first operator track here, and this is the 303 you heard in the intro. And this is how I made this. So, what we've got here is, you can see I've got a saw wave. Like I said, just starts with a saw wave. I've got the envelope set like this, so it's kind of like more plucky. And then I've got the second oscillator doing some FM with that. You can see it's very subtle. It's just doing a tiny bit. If I turn it up and down, you'll kind of see. There's without that, and then with it. So you can hear it just kind of adds to the timbre and like how the saw wave sounds sonically. And so this is definitely like the first thing. I would recommend trying FM. And the key is just not to do too much. Like, you start with a saw wave, and then try just doing some FM. In this case, I did it with this waveform where basically I just started with a sine wave, and then I added this little harmonic there. You can see if I turn that off, it's a sine wave. And then, yeah, just that simple harmonic. You can also see I've got this up an octave. And yeah, again, this just kind of helps you to get a little bit more of a different texture in the sound, while still getting that kind of saw wavy sound. So then after that, I've got it going into a low pass filter, just like on the one I showed you at the start. Pretty simple stuff. It's just a low pass filter. And then I've got that being modulated with this LFO. And so what's happening is I'm kind of using the LFO like an envelope. I've got the saw down waveform. And you can hear it's just giving it that kind of like pluck. That like where the filter goes down. Very similar to how I showed you with that envelope on the sound that I made at the start. So yeah, so I just like using the LFO for that. You can kind of get some more interesting sort of modulation. It sounds a little different than when you just use like an envelope with it. I also have this pitch envelope in here, which you can hear pretty subtly. Basically, it's just making the sound go like up in pitch. You can kind of hear it's like, wow. If I turn it off, and then back on again, there's it in reverse. So yeah, it's just kind of like going down from the bottom, and then making it go up. This sounds kind of cool on some of those like longer notes. And I feel like it gives it more of like an interesting kind of vibe. And the key with this is just not to do too much. Like, I have it going pretty quickly, so even on the really short notes, it doesn't get in the way too much. So then, after this, I have a bit of processing, and this is where the sound really comes together. If I turn all of this stuff off, which may look like a lot, but it's actually not that complex, but if I turn all of this off, this is what it sounds like, just coming straight out of the synth. So this is what it sounds like coming straight out of the synth. So yeah, not quite the sound just yet. So the first thing that I have on here is the saturator, which sounds like this. And so you can hear, this is very important for the sound. This is like what's giving it the kind of more crunchy, sort of crispy texture. And taking it from this like really deep bass into something like this. And the question you may be asking yourself at this juncture is, how did I think to go from this sound to what it sounds like with all of these effects on there? And the truth here is really just that I started with a very different kind of sound. Like, I started with just like a very standard like saw wave, low pass filter, envelope, 303 kind of sound, you know, a lot of filter resonance, all that. And then I started adding effects and kind of dialing things back. So then eventually you just get to a point where when you turn the effects off, it sounds like this, and it's like not even recognizable. So yeah, that's kind of like a thing, because I feel like that was something I struggled with at first. Like when I would hear these sounds, it's like, yeah, you can get that at the end, but like, how did you get that just from the synth, you know? And the truth is, like I said, you kind of start with a sound that's very different from this. Like the original sound was maybe more like this, something like that, like a more standard kind of 303. And again, just as I added effects and kind of played with it, I sort of dialed it back a bit more and got this. So then, like I said, with the saturator, what we're doing here is just kind of adding that like crunch and that nice texture to it. I've got the drive up a bit, and then you can see I went in with the wave shaper here. I did kind of a lot, but that's what really adds that kind of like honky texture to it. So yeah, not really a whole lot to say there. Like I said, it's just kind of a matter of getting the sound out of the synth and then taking the saturator, playing around with the wave shaper until you find something that sounds good. So before I get into that, I just want to let you guys know, after that, I've got this chorus, which sounds like this. So if you like this video, you will definitely here's without it, it's in the description, make sure to check it out. And then with it. And yeah, let's get started. So you can hear this is just adding a bit of kind of stereo width to the sound. It helps to kind of beef it up a bit, it makes it less like flat, you know, like this is very samples and the presets just flat, and even like we just start adding all these other effects. Like the sound is there, but it's not quite as deep. Yeah, so the idea behind this video as when it has this chorus. So that's the goal there, and you can hear it also makes it a little bit less like raspy coming right now. They always have been kind of makes it a particular style of sound. So yeah, then after that I've got this echo, which is set kind of standard sort of like quarter notes, and those are just regular quarter notes, something like this. You get like any kind of anything like that, and what this is doing is just adding some space to the sound with a bit of an envelope on it. You can hear it. It's not super wet. It's only at like 21% wetness. You can see I've got the filter kind of set like this. That sounds pretty much like a TB303. Yeah, this is just adding a bit of like extra sort of like almost ear candy to the sound. And as you probably know, this isn't the 303 that's being used. Like you can hear this is also kind of just adding some space. If I turn it off, the way that you get this kind of again, it's very flat and dry. Using very similar kind of with that little bit of echo in the background. If I turn the dry wet up, you'll hear it more. But just with a little bit more processing and a little bit more kind of give it like a little bit more space. I have to just make it again less like and this kind of a dry you heard in the intro. So then after that, I've got a bit of reverb. And this is just basically adding to what the echo is doing. See, I've got the size down pretty low, pretty short decay time. Like I said, it's just giving it that kind of like quick, snappy like this, so it's kind of like space. And again, giving it more dimension. And then I've got the second oscillator overdrive FM with that. You can see it's very subtle. It's just doing a tiny bit. If I turn it up that heavy, like you can see, the drive's only at 21%. There's without that, adding overdrive after your reverb and after your delay, and even after your chorus, just kind of adds a really good way to add a lot more texture to it. Like if I put this before, here's what it sounds like after those sonically. And so this is definitely like the first thing I would recommend trying FM, and the key is just not to do too much. It's not quite as cool. You can hear like the reverb just sounds kind of like stale and dry, and I just started with the sine wave pulled out as much, and then I added this little harmonic. When you put that drive after it, it really like brings out some nice character. Just that simple harmonic. Those effects. You can also see I've got this up and up at 100%. Yeah, again, this is kind of drive down pretty low, and then also an important thing about using Ableton's overdrive, also getting that kind of saw wavy. So basically on this filter, after that, I've got it going like this by default. Low pass filter, just like and you hear that's very thin, and that's because this is basically just a band pass filter. So when you turn this resonance up, I've got that being modulated. There you go, you get the full body sound. So what's happening? So after that, I've got an erosion, which is adding a very small down, like high-end crunch. And you can hear it's just giving it that kind of like, and then with it, like where the filter goes down, very subtle, but it just adds again that extra little bit of kind of like crunch in the high end. And I feel like yeah, so I just like using the LFO for that. You can kind of makes it stick out that much more. Sort of modulation. Then after that, I've got an EQ8. It sounds a little different because this kick like an envelope with it. I also have this kind of like the bass in here, which you can hear. I'm gonna talk about that in a moment. But yeah, like the kick is kind of the bass, so basically it's just making the sound go like up in pitch. Like I still left a little bit around like 100 hertz, so you still get that nice, kind of like deep stuff. If you just cut it to like here, it's too thin. So yeah, it's just the key is just to leave in like that nice kind of like low end that doesn't get in the way. This sounds kind of cool, and also cut out around like 190 hertz, so basically like 200 hertz, and I feel like it kind of gets rid of some of those like boxy frequencies. But the key with this is just not to do too much. Like those kind of frequencies. This is a big thing for getting the kind of like more modern, it doesn't sort of squelchy 303 texture. If you cut those kind of frequencies out, and this is where the sound really helps. If I turn all this stuff off, there's without the EQ, you can hear it's a bit messy sounding. But if I turn all of this off, and then with it, it just cleans up those little things in there that were kind of messing up the mix. And that's really it. The only other thing that I have on there is just this compressor. This is what it sounds like coming straight out of the synth. So yeah, like I said, it's not really that crazy. So the first thing that I have on here is the saturator, which sounds out of your synth. Like I said, like kind of working with saw wave sounds. And so you can hear this is very important for the sound. This is like what's giving it the kind of more crunchy, sort of crispy texture. Using a wavetable and taking it from this like kind of like a saw wave type of sound to it, but maybe a little bit different. And then just kind of like adding the effects to it that really give it that kind of texture, like the distortion. How did I think to go from this sound effects that kind of help what it sounds like with all these effects on there? So you can also do kind of some other cool stuff with this. I started with a very different kind of sound here, which sounds like this. I started with just like a very standard like saw wave, low pass filter, envelope, 303 kind of sound, you know, a lot of filter resonance, all that, which isn't quite a 303, but I did think it was kind of an interesting bass sound, and you can definitely do like a lot of this kind of stuff. And so the way that I made this was literally just like copying this patch down, and then what I did here, that's kind of like a thing, because I just changed, I turned off the LFO, and then I put an envelope on the filter, and then I just have it going slower. So like, the 303 kind of sound would be something like this. And the truth is, like I said, you kind of start with a sound that's very different from this. Like the original sound was maybe more like this, like that quick kind of pluck. But then all I did was just add this attack. And again, just as I added effects, and it kind of like builds into the sound, then you get like back a bit more and got this. So then, like I said, kind of like that cool thing. And then I add the MIDI program like this, so it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like playing off of that. And then nice texture to it. Just kind of drive up about like you can do some kind of one with the wave shaper here. I did kind of a lot, but that's what really adds. Maybe you start with a 303 and do something like this. That kind of like really leads to some interesting sound design. And these drums I'll show you, they're pretty simple here. I just have like a reverb kick. Like I said, it's just kind of a matter of getting the sound out of the synth. Then I made just like a punchy kick sample, going with the wave shaper until you kind of beef it up. And then I've got the pretty standard kind of kick. After that, I've got this chorus, Techno kick, reverb rack, nothing too crazy there, and then just a bit more saturation, and then I've with it. I've got this operator hi-hat I made. Just adding a bit of kind of stereo, just some white noise sound. It helps you kind of beef it up a bit into a bandpass filter, like flat, you know, like this. And then we've got this hi-hat, which is just a shaker, and even like we just start adding all these other effects. Like, and then the sound is there, but it's not quite as deep. So, yeah, and big as when it has stuff, but definitely good to think about. Like, it makes it a little bit less like raspy coming out of the saturator. Like, if you just took like a really basic, like I said, like that kind of one. Then after that, I've got this echo, which is I'll show you. It just doesn't really sound like it just doesn't have that nice kind of like modern techno or anything like that. And what this is doing is just adding some space to the sound. You can hear it's not super wet. It's only at like 21% wetness. You can see I've got the filter. Like I feel like that would sound kind of out of place in one of these type of tracks, and that is technically. Yeah, this is just adding a bit of like extra sort of like sound, but definitely this sounds a lot better to me. And a lot more fitting. Like you can hear this is also kind of just adding some space. So yeah, turn it off. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, it's very flat and dry. As usual, you can get the project file and samples with that little bit of echo in the background. If I turn the dry wet up, you'll hear all that kind of stuff for free in the description. Just make sure to check really helps to give it like a little bit more space and just make it again less like available. Kind of a dry synth sound. As well as the subscribe. I've got a bit of reverb in this video in the comments, and this is just basically adding to what the echo is doing. Amazing. I've got the size down pretty low, pretty short decay time. I really just can't believe giving you that kind of like quick, snappy. I love you all. I'm gonna get and again giving it more dimension. And yeah, so then after that I have this overdrive. And the reason why I put the overdrive after all of these effects is for one, it's not really that heavy. Like you can see, the drive's only at 21%. But also adding overdrive after your reverb and after your delay and even after your chorus is a really good way to add a lot more texture to it. Like if I put this before, here's what it sounds like after those. And if I put it before them, you will hear. It's not quite as cool. You can hear like the reverb just sounds kind of like stale and dry, and the echo isn't really being pulled out as much. But when you put that drive after it, it really like brings out some nice character with those effects. So with this, I've just got the drive wet up at 100%, and then I've got the drive down pretty low. And then also an important thing about using Ableton's overdrive is you need to turn up this resonance. So basically on this filter, I'm pretty sure it comes like this by default. And you can hear that's very thin, and that's because this is basically just a bandpass filter. So when you turn this resonance up, there you go, you get the full-bodied sound. So then after that, I've got an erosion, which is just adding a very small amount of like high-end crunch. Here's without it, and then with it. It's very subtle, but it just adds again that extra little bit of kind of like crunch in the high end that I feel like makes it stick out that much more. Then after that, I've got an EQ8, cutting out the low end because this kick is kind of like the bass. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But yeah, like the kick is kind of the bass here, so I just cut out the low end, but I didn't cut out like I still left a little bit around like 100 hertz, so you still get that nice kind of like deep stuff. If you just cut it to like here, it's too thin. So yeah, the key is just to leave in like that nice kind of like low end that doesn't get in the way of the kick. And then I also cut out around like 190 hertz, so basically like 200 hertz. This just kind of gets rid of some of those like boxy frequencies. If I turn this up, you'll hear like those kind of frequencies. This is a big thing for getting the kind of like more modern sort of squelchy 303 texture. If you cut those kind of frequencies out, it really helps. There's without the EQ. You can hear it's a bit messy sounding. And then with it, it just cleans up those little things in there that were kind of messing up the mix. And that's really it. The only other thing that I have on there is just this compressor sidechaining into the kick. And yeah, like I said, it's not really that crazy. The main key is just to kind of get the sound out of your synth. Like I said, like kind of working with saw wave sounds that have a little bit more to them. So in this case, like using some FM, or maybe like if you're using Serum or something, using a wavetable in Serum that has kind of like a saw wave type of sound to it, but maybe a little bit different. And then just kind of like adding the effects to it that really give it that kind of texture, like the distortion and then the nice sort of spacey effects that, yeah, kind of help beef it up a bit more. So you can also do kind of some other cool stuff with this. I have the second one that I made here, which sounds like this. Which isn't quite a 303, but I did think it was kind of an interesting bass sound, and you can definitely do like a lot of this kind of stuff. And so the way that I made this was literally just by copying this patch down, and then what I did here was I turned off the LFO, and then I put an envelope on the filter, and then I just have it going slower. So like the 303 kind of sound would be something like this. Like that quick kind of pluck. But then all I did was just added this attack. And it kind of like builds into the sound. Then you get like kind of like that cool thing. And then I had the MIDI program like this. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like playing off of that rhythm. So just kind of something to think about. Like you can do some kind of more interesting stuff with these sounds as well. Like maybe you start with a 303 and do something like this. And yeah, it can really lead to some interesting sound design. And these drums I'll show you, they're pretty simple here. I just have like a reverb kick that I made, just like a punchy kick sample, going through some saturation to kind of beef it up. And then I've got the pretty standard kind of kick, you know, techno kick reverb rack. Nothing too crazy there. And then just a bit more saturation. And then I've EQ'd it a bit. I've got this operator hi-hat I made. Just some white noise with a tight envelope on it, going into a bandpass filter. And then we've got this hi-hat, which is just a shaker and a hi-hat layered together. And then on both of those, I have the simple delay doing 16th notes. So, yeah, pretty simple stuff, but definitely good to think about. Like I said, like, with the 303 sounds, I mean, like, if you just took, like, a really basic, like I said, like, that kind of one that I made in the beginning of this video, I'll show you. It just doesn't really sound, like, it just doesn't have that nice kind of, like, modern techno, like, power to it, you know? Like, something like this. Like, I feel like that would sound kind of out of place in one of these type of tracks. And that is technically like a 303-esque sound, but definitely this sounds a lot better to me. And a lot more fitting. So yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed. That's gonna be it for today, everybody. As usual, you can get the project file and samples from this video and MIDI and all the presets, all that kind of stuff for free in the description. So make sure to check that out. And once again, if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it will be available. Make sure to hit the like button as well as the subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Thank you so much, everybody. All the support lately has been amazing. I know I say this like a million times a week, but I really just can't believe that I have you guys. You guys are amazing. I love you all. I'm gonna get off the soapbox here, and yeah, I hope you have a great day.